Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Child Care Bridge Podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your child care center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Child Care Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Child Care Bridge. Today's topic is about putting together a promotional calendar, but more importantly, I want to give you some strategies as to how you can pivot, what you want to put in different months, and then also how you can track the effectiveness. So we've been building kind of week after week after week, and I'm throwing lots of tactics and strategies at you. Now we're to the point where we're going to start bringing on lots of owners of centers and other people that I think would be very interesting for you to meet. So rather than this just being the Michael Tasner show, I'm going to start bringing in some really interesting people. But I consciously decided for the first couple of months that I wanted to make sure you had a bit of a solid foundation. Because far too many times, and I'm guilty of this as well, I fall into the whole shiny object syndrome, where I'm going one direction and then I learn about something different and I move in a different direction. Oh, and I forgot that I didn't have a couple of foundational pieces there. And then fast forward 6 months and I really haven't made the momentum that I was looking for. So if you haven't listened to most of the episodes, they all have largely one core topic. So if you're looking for more reviews, as an example, to inject some cash flow into your center, if you're looking at what to charge, how to deal with difficult families, all those kinds of things, there's a particular episode that's already been done for you. But a question that I've been getting a lot, especially anytime there's a new year, is what kind of promotional calendar works best? And with many answers that I give, it largely depends on the type of center you are, where you're located, and how often you are enrolling. So let's start with the last one. So if you have very hard cutoff dates, so like if you're only enrolling for 2 months, 3 months, and then everybody starts, let's say in New York, they typically start the first week of September. And they go through middle to late June if they're not doing any kind of summer camp. So if you have very strict cutoffs that you're not going to add anyone else. So come September starts, you are not adding any new spots. Unless somebody leaves, you might have a new spot, or you make the decision that this is the class or these are the different classes, and that's it. So that's the first thing you need to look at, because if you have a shorter enrollment window where you're not adding new enrollments during the course of the year, or you can't add additional ages, your promotional calendar needs to be highly condensed to where during September through June, you're continuing to brand. You're putting out more branding materials rather than now enrolling. Click to schedule a tour. Call us to see if we're a good fit. You're really promoting more of the different fun things that your center is up to. You're promoting the curriculum. You're promoting your teachers' names, the director, your name, anything interesting that you're doing, because you want to stay top of mind during the year. But then as you get closer to that enrollment window, so let's say that it's late June, July, August, you need to be starting to ramp up into that period, so it's not like, great, everyone stopped and then we're going to try and figure out what we're doing to generate enrollments. So then you would have that very heavy now enrolling over the course of a couple months. If you're offering summer camp, that should be something that also is coming out ahead of time in tandem with the now enrolling for the next school year. Most of the centers we work with are enrolling during the course of the year. We do have some centers where they're only enrolling in a specific time, but traditionally, most centers are taking enrollments. They might not be at complete capacity. They've got a lot of part-time versus full-time, so they can add some additional students and kids. I mean, people are constantly moving and changing jobs and changing locations and all that good stuff. If you have a revolving cycle to where you can constantly be adding enrollments, it opens up for a lot more interesting promotions. What we have seen to be the most successful is if it is that September through June, you start to then plan things around that. Now, obviously, if you're in Florida versus Texas versus California, you're going to have different times when school ends. So if school's ending in May, for example, and that would flip over to summer camp, you're going to start your summer camp promotion typically 60 to 90 days in advance from when that actually happens. So you would be promoting summer camp now. So you want to look at when are those key cutoff dates that are in a line with the school, and then start to look at what are your different offerings. If there's no summer camp, then you can pivot to some branding ads during that time if you're not going to be pushing summer camp, and or you start to continue to push the now enrolling. If you're going to have now enrolling ads going for 12 months, which is something that we personally recommend, even for centers that have hard cutoff dates, because we want to build a wait list, we might scale back some of the efforts and some of that ad spend on the now enrolling during off-peak times. But we like to keep things out there that, yeah, we are always enrolling, but you might wind up on a wait list. If you have those ads going, let's say every single month, from a promotional standpoint, you want to start to change things with the season. You want to start to change things with the personality, the culture of your center. And this is a really big thing. You don't have to fall in line with what every other center is doing from a promotional standpoint. So if February is the month of love, for example, you don't have to have a promotion that ties into Valentine's Day if you don't want. If every other center continues to just push generic now enrolling content, Valentine's Day is a fun time to do something interesting. So maybe you actually show some Valentine's Day pictures from last year, and that's a little bit of that call to action. That is, hey, if you want to come and see some of the fun things that we're up to, especially for holidays, click here to learn more. So you can definitely start to tie things in with the seasonality. If you have an open house once or twice a year, you're going to want to have at least a 45 to 60 day window where you're pushing and promoting the open house. And that should be online marketing, offline marketing. Again, if you have summer camp, you want to have 60 to 90 day window to where you're starting to push summer camp. And every center, regardless of where they're located, you're always going to have those couple of months that are really strong enrolling months. So for a lot of centers, it's July and August, or it's August and the beginning of September in late July. January traditionally is a pretty good enrollment month as well. But it's interesting because we can definitely see the ebbs and the flows across all the centers that we work with. And yes, there are those seasonality pieces where January, February tends to be a little bit stronger. Then things get a little bit slower, March, April, and then you get back into kind of summer camp, depending on, again, where you're located. So then you get a little boost there, and then things are a little quieter, and then you get a big boost for that September rush, and then everything's kind of back to school, September, a little bit into October, slows November, December. So you're going to have those ebbs and flows, but the interesting thing that we've been seeing now more than ever is unexplained spikes. So we're very good at reading and looking at historical data, but there are a lot of times where we might start to see huge spikes in the month of March, where March could historically be a little bit slower for a lot of the centers that we're working with. But that could be because all of a sudden a couple of childcare centers went out of business. A new corporation wound up opening up. So one of the big things that I really always encourage our centers to do is to keep a pulse on the competition, but more so on the marketplace as a whole. So you should be spending a few minutes a day reading some of the business journals to see if there are new companies that are coming or leaving. If there's a huge corporation that a lot of families that are currently active at your center work at, and it's showing, well, they're closing in the next 6 months, you got to start to plan for those things. So I want you to keep a pulse on companies that are kind of coming and going in your area, but I also want you to keep a pulse on if a center is potentially closing down. And you can do that by kind of monitoring some of the different mom groups and parent groups online. You can do that by just putting them in Google Alerts. For example, you can once a week or once a month kind of scan their Google My Business listing and or their Yelp listing. So you'd be surprised to see, probably not surprised, but be surprised to see what some of the parents will say, like, oh my gosh, we came and there was only 4 kids at this center. Maybe they're not even in business anymore. So you can get a pulse, so that what I don't want you to do is to throw a bunch of marketing and then stop, and throw a bunch of marketing and then stop. So the question that we've continued to get asked is, well, what does that promotional calendar look like? And it really depends on, again, your center. And as I said earlier, the culture and the personality. Are you a STEM-based and you're a lot more about kind of technology, and maybe there's a bit more of a serious component? What kind of things can you tie into during the course of the year that fit with your personality? If you're a bit more, I don't want to say bubbly, but maybe you're a little bit more zany and there's lots of colors and neon signs, and like it's a bit more playful, more like a play-based center, then you can start to look at some fun promotions around that. The easiest ones are always to tie into holidays. However, I want you to look at how you can continue to stand out. The problem with holidays is that it's expected. It's like one of those that, okay, great, they're going to do some kind of promotion at this time. So your parents, the families, they start to anticipate it. But what if in the month of March, instead of scaling back, you were running a really fun ad that just showcased lots of really cool pictures, and it just said, want to come enjoy the fun or learn about the vibe, or just something that is drastically different. Those are the promotions that are going to start to stand out. Now, I have a marketing template. I'll make sure to link it for you. And I do want you to start to have some rough plans for the month ahead, but I don't want you planning this so far in advance that you're not able to be nimble. And that's kind of what I alluded to at the beginning of this show, is that often you're going to need to pivot. So again, if a center closes down, you need to ramp up your marketing. And I don't want you to be running ads that say, did you leave this center, or now enrolling because this center closed? But I want you to be able to strategically run ads that say, reliable, we're going to stand the test of time, we've been around for 45 years, X amount of locations, and you're hitting those areas that you know that those families were coming from. So you got to be able to pivot and roll out a promotion quickly, rather than saying, well, Michael, we built our entire plan for the year and that wasn't in there. You've got to have that nimbleness to be able to pivot a little bit, and you've got to start to watch and gauge reactions. But at the end of the day, if I could give you a little bit more pragmatic advice, it would be to look and continue to see what the numbers are telling you. How many leads are coming in? How many tours are you giving? How many enrollments did that equate to? The numbers tell the story of what promotions are working, what promotions you should dial back or scale up. I looked at a center's numbers right before I started recording. And in January, they had 119 leads across 2 locations. So give or take 50 leads per location. One of the locations did 19 tours and they got 11 enrollments. The other location did 4 tours and 1 enrollment. Those numbers start to tell the story. Now, in that case, it's looking at what happened when the lead tried to convert to a tour. Was it the lead follow-up? But you want to be looking at those metrics consistently to allow you to see if you need to pivot. How are the summer camp efforts currently going? If it's not moving quick enough, but you're getting the results, then you need to kind of dial it up a little bit. Maybe you've got to change up the creative. So let the numbers start to dictate the story of that promotional calendar, but build out at the beginning, at least to have, great, here's our framework. We're thinking these couple of months is going to be summer camp. These months are going to be back to school, now enrolling. These months we're going to do these promotions. But then be nimble as you get enrollments in certain ages. Pivot your promotions a little bit, but leverage the data to continue to tell the story of what's working and what needs to pivot. Can't wait for you to tune in next week as we continue to deliver more great tips, tools, tactics, and we start to bring on some really interesting guests. I'm also going to be announcing in an email and video to our entire database of a contest that we're doing. So be on the lookout. If you're not on our database, make sure that you subscribe to that, where we're actually going to work with a center owner or multi-center owner over the course of the next year and document all the things that we're helping them with live. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.